Spider-Man Miles Morales is Insomniac's latest addition to their Spider-Man story, which is preceded by probably my favorite superhero video game ever. I love the Batman Arkham games. I don't know, man. That Spider-Man game was so fucking perfect. Here you play as Miles Morales, who's getting used to being Spider-Man alone for the first time. Peter is on vacation with MJ, and so he is filling Spider-Man's shoes solo for 2 weeks in New York City. And what I love instantly about that is that you have to earn the respect of the city. The city knows that Miles is not the Spider-Man they've had for a long time. They recognize that he's a kid, and they don't really view him as integral to the health and safety of their city like they do Peter's Spidey. And so whenever Miles shows up to help people, they're like, oh, hey kid, yeah, I was kind of hoping for the other guy. And every great Spider-Man story usually has Spider-Man dealing with his relationship with New York City. Sometimes they love him, sometimes they hate him. Lies are spread about him in The Bugle by J. Jonah Jameson, and of course you get that podcast in this game. Not as much as in the original, he's there throughout. There's another podcast that sometimes plays a little bit more than J. Jonah Jameson's and was by no means as entertaining as his. But the point being is that as Miles, you have to earn the respect of this city, which is great because a lot of films in particular, not just video games, but films, have been making their heroes flawless lately. You see these people who are perfectly trained from the beginning. They don't seem to have any issues. As a character, that's very boring, extremely fucking boring. And so I love that Miles is not just a kid who isn't used to being Spider-Man. He's someone who isn't particularly good at it yet. Now, I wasn't able to pre-order a PS5, nor was I able to find one, no matter how hard I looked. And so I got the game on PS4, and it looks incredible. It still looks great. The snowy landscape of New York is gorgeous, but it has a $49.99 price tag, and that should tell you something. This is not going to be the immersive, very long experience that the first game had. I beat the campaign for this in 2 days, flat. Now, there's still a lot of stuff to do. There's tons of missions and objectives that get unlocked, a lot of fun crimes and things you can stop all over the city. It doesn't mean the game's over. So if you're hoping to play a really in-depth and long campaign, you're not going to get that here. But if you just want to swing around New York City while also being engaged by a fairly good storyline, then you're going to have a great time with this game just as I did. Although at times it can feel very rushed. Some of my issues with the campaign is that there are certain very imperative moments, and it's sort of brushed over very quickly in one scene, where it feels like it really needs to stew a little bit longer. There's also a character in the game that is obsessed with blaming Miles for not being entirely truthful about something when they themselves have a whopper of a secret. And so it feels kind of hypocritical whenever this character complains about that over and over again. And there's a very generic businessman villain who has an evil plan that is not good for New York, and wow. Gratefully, he's not the spotlight villain in the game. Thank God for that. But a Spider-Man game lives and dies on the swinging, and if you loved it the first time around, you're going to like it even more now. The character animations, the body movement, it feels very imperfect in just the right way. It doesn't look like this extremely trained Spider-Man is swinging around New York. You can tell that Miles is getting into it and sort of figuring out how everything works. I love that about it. Yeah, he looks like a badass, but he doesn't feel like he's been doing it for very long. This game also features a new combat technique where Miles can generate bioelectricity, and he can charge up generators, and he can repair things that are broken, but most importantly, he can punch guys really fucking hard with lightning fists. It's extremely satisfying every time he does it, and the game has various upgrades where you can learn new ways of doing it, and it gets to a point where you kind of feel like a god. The game takes place on Christmas, and I love the look of New York with the winter and all the Christmas decorations, and Insomniac spared no expense. John Hammond will be very happy. You go to the Daily Bugle and you look in a window and you can see that inside this person's house, there's Christmas decorations. That attention to detail is extremely impressive. I did encounter a handful of glitches in the game. I'm assuming this could be just my playthrough. It could happen anywhere. There were times where I loaded as Miles and I was just a head, none of my body or clothes loaded. Sometimes I just wasn't in the frame until I was being interacted with. There are certainly characters and aspects of this game that I wouldn't mind talking about, but since it's only been out for a few days, I'm going to avoid spoilers. I will say that the game does have some surprisingly emotional weight to it, And I think my favorite thing about the game is really just earning the respect of New York City as Miles Morales. So although the story isn't as immersive as the original game, I still found this to be extremely fun, and I can't wait to see more stories set in this universe. I'm gonna give Spider-Man Miles Morales an 8.5 out of 10. I do want to address one thing, and that is Peter's new design. There's been a lot of talk about this on the internet. They decided for whatever reason to change the design that no one had a problem with in the first game. There's no nice way to say it. I hate it. I think it actually ruins a lot of what I loved about that character. It's like they heard me in the first review say this is my favorite Spider-Man incarnation since the Raimi films and went, too bad, we're gonna change it. It just reminds me of that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There was nothing wrong with it. Now he looks far too young. One of the things that was so great about that first game is that Peter Parker felt lived in. You got the sense that he had been doing it for a while. Now he looks the same age as Miles. So early on in this game, when they have some scenes together and he's sort of mentoring Miles, I was like, this looks like two college kids who are just kind of hanging out. You never got that mentor-student relationship. It's completely gone now. He just looks far too young, and it's not like a Sonic the Hedgehog thing where he looks strangely horrible. He looks totally fine, but we already liked the way he looked, and it worked for the story. I don't understand the change, and I don't like it. One other thing, one final addition to this review. A lot of people have asked me what I thought of the game The Last of Us Part 2. I did play it. In fact, I played it twice. The first time I played the game, I thought, didn't like it as much as the first one, but I certainly didn't hate it the way that a lot of people on the internet did. And since so many people seem to hate the game, I thought, all right, I'll play it a second time. Maybe I fucking missed something. I played it a second time, and I was like, yeah, still don't like it as much as the first one, but I don't hate it. There's risks in that game that I completely understand why so many people were angered by that risk, but I'm the type of person who really admires creative risks. When I see one, I don't instantly jump on social media and scream about it. I usually think to myself, oh my God, what a fucking terrible idea. Let's see if they earn it. That's usually what I think. And I wait for them to earn it. I think if they're going to do that, they must earn it. And they didn't entirely earn it in The Last of Us Part 2, but I admired them for trying. I admire any artist who takes a risk that big. And there's an even bigger risk, I would say, about halfway through that game when you switch perspectives. Again, that also did not bother me as much as most people because I sort of liked the non-linear aspect of seeing things from another perspective. But it wasn't as good as the first one, which I do think is a masterpiece. I think that the second game is good. I certainly don't hate it the way a lot of people do. It didn't make me angry. I decided not to review it because it felt like walking a tightrope. There was like no way to have fun talking about that game, which sucks. Not as good as the first one, but certainly to me anyway. I mean, I don't hate it. I did enjoy playing the game for sure. I think it's acted wonderfully. Some of the best graphics I've ever seen in a game, and really great music too, and combat. But yeah, there's a lot about it that didn't quite work, but I admired the attempt. So that's my best way to put it, honestly. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. I have a lot of stuff planned coming up for you guys. Thank you as always, and if you like this, you can click right here and get stuck manai.